Just, we're gonna have two guest speakers today, and we have a handout for one of them. If you haven't picked up the handout, it's on the table, behind Ron, the gentleman in the red shirt. All right, let's move on. All right, we kind of have public comments. Does anybody else have any public comments they'd like to make? Yes, Dave.
I may have missed it, but what was the outcome of the election?
We got reelected, the same five that we have now, which is myself, Dan, Johannes, and Tina, and Matt.
Good.
Thank you. We appreciate you guys. Anything else? Public comment? Going once, going twice? We're moving on. All right, AGC board activities. Just wanted to bring these things to your attention, which is very important. This is one of the tenets of our group, is to try to get real growers elected to CAC and to have. And so they just sent out the nomination package, and I would recommend that if you'd like to participate or be a board member, I encourage it. It's a good experience. If you have questions, we actually have some board members here in the room. We have Honest Carolina from District 2. We have John Burns from District 3. He actually has a ranch in Ventura and also one here in Burnside County, Temecula. And we have Robert Jackson from District 3. And District 1, sorry about that. And District 1, there's going to be an open seat. Jessica Hunter, who's currently the board member, her term is up, so that seat will be available if anybody wants to run. If you have any questions at all, feel free to give me a call, or Johannes, or John, or Robert, and ask them about what it's like to be on the board. But strongly encourage to have real true growers on the board. Or Charlie, that's right. Charlie's been on many boards, CAC and HAB, so he has experience on both boards. All right. CAC Finance Committee meeting is coming up July 30th. If you'd like to sit in on that, I recommend that as well. And then we are going to see how we're doing this year, actually. It's been a pretty crazy year. California production volume was raised to 300 million. We started out at what, was it 200? 200? So we went from 200 to 300 million.
Went to 250 and now it's over 300.
Yes, yeah. And let's see how the pricing, it's been all over the map. And the reason is, and everybody's heard by now, is there was a shutdown earlier in July that resulted from two USDA inspectors being threatened. And so the State Department and the USDA stopped shipping from Michoacan. Jalisco was still shipping, but Michoacan was not. And currently, this last status I took of the issue was that Michoacan is sending imports over, but there are still some restrictions with them as well. And I don't know if that's correct or not. Tina, do you know, or what do you have?
Now all restrictions are lifted.
All of them are lifted, okay, so they're all lifted. But it definitely helped us with our pricing. So here's the pricing for July 24th. And since June 26th, the pricing for conventional has gone down 25%. The reasoning for that? Not quite sure what the reasoning is for that. Other than Mexico, Michoacan began shipping again, they said that there's the current status that I saw on a pricing sheet. The assessment they gave was that there's more fruit than demand currently.
In Peru and Colombia, a lot of fruit in our markets also.
And they increased the California production by over 100 million pounds, so that makes a difference too.
Yeah.
And just imagine what's going to happen next year when we have over 700 million pounds.
Make a comment on that?
Yeah, we're just going to say, just imagine what's going to happen in pricing next year when California I predict it's gonna be over 700 million pounds for California next year, maybe even more, so.
Anybody else want to make a comment on the market? So if we look at the pricing, this is current pricing right now, and I'm going to take you to this average all sizes. So now you're looking at $1.13 versus $1.49 back in June. And then we're looking at the difference here as well. The $1.74 versus $1.72, it looks like organic pricing is held pretty steady. So if that's indicative of demand, and even if with higher volumes, the organic pricing is held steady. All right, so let's, without any further ado, let's introduce our two guest speakers and our topic for today. So we're looking at Well Drilling 101, what you should know before drilling an artisan well. We have two guest speakers. We've got Wes Danskin, excuse me, and he is a senior research hydrologist for the USGS survey. He lives and works in Southern California with over 40 years of experience, and this is some of his background. He has an extensive background. He is the USGS San Diego Hydrology Project. He's been with that project for 20 plus years. He teaches, he advises, he mentors in the U.S. and recently in Jordan, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Morocco. His publications include both short journal articles on new research findings and lengthy archival quality comprehensive hydrologic reports. If you want to find out more about him, then you can research him on californiawater.usgs on that link below, and I'll provide this to everyone so you can access that information as well. And then he'll start with a talk, and both Ron and Wes will tag team along the way because they both have information that's with different experiences as well. But we'll start with Wes, and he'll be examining the basic hydrology concepts you should consider before drilling a well. And you can ask questions during the presentation and after to both of our speakers here. So without any further ado, Wes. Yes.
So thank you for inviting me, because this is where I actually learn stuff. Is from people who actually try to do things on the earth. And growing much of anything I've found is just about as difficult as anything. What's not on my resume is that my family owns orange groves in Florida. We used to make money on that, now I'm subsidizing them. And then we have dryland wheat in eastern Montana that my grandmother homesteaded. So we've owned that for the better part of 100 years. Why it's dryland and how we actually make money, I have no idea, because I've been out there. And so I don't know much about avocados, and I don't know much about the agricultural industry actually in California or other places. But I give you bonus points for choosing this. Whatever drugs you need to take to keep going through the myriad of things that can happen in climate variability and hurricanes coming out of Africa. I grew up in Montana. I never bothered to keep track of hurricanes until I realized they come out of Africa and they end up in Florida on our orange groves. Any case, so let me, we'll tag team, because on the one hand, I know general concepts of geology, water resources. I'm very interested in applying them to your concerns or answering your questions. So a lot of this will be feedback of concerns. Then Ron is a driller that actually makes groundwater happen to people. And we have our own USGS drill rig that we use for research, and it's one of the most exciting things that I do, because it's got a lot of uncertainty, a lot of expenditure of funds, and there's always something new that we learn every time we drill a well. And we're drilling research wells, not production wells, but to be able to monitor wells. The most recent well that I put down was 2,600 feet deep, so much deeper than anyone would tend to go for anything but gas. So, any case, so let me meet you guys. How many people, and I just don't know avocados, so although I like them, and sidebar, my black lab knows that avocado and guacamole are the same thing. He's bilingual, of course. And I go, oh. So that was news to me. But in any case, how many people have avocados that are grown on flat acreage? Can you raise your hand? Okay. And how many people have avocados that are grown on some sort of hill slope? That's what I thought. Okay. Other questions? How many people have a well or have had a well? Okay. How many people have a water tank that is pretty big? Okay, we're in the right part of the world. Okay, so in the big, let me back up. How many people are growing avocados, not Riverside, but in the San Diego County area? Okay, pretty much everybody? Okay, so as I drive around, I try to understand the avocados, and my first comment to Tina was, wow, you guys are still in business, because all I remember is about 15 years ago, there were a lot of issues going on, and I was concerned about the fate of avocados in Southern California or the United States. So I'm very happy that they have been replanted, or things have happened such that you actually have local produce. I think that's a good thing, just my own view. So what do you need to understand about water, right? So probably you guys all know this, but what I've learned is that the first time you show up someplace, and this would be true for San Diego, right on the coast, if you go down to National City, Chula Vista, you go through the San Luis Rey drainage, you go through any of those little drainages that go up, maybe you're even up in San Isabel in that area. Well, the first people would start some sort of agriculture, thousands of years ago, perhaps, certainly hundreds of years ago. And attaining water usually would be right next to a stream, right? So you have some sort of flat area next to the San Luis Rey River, and you try to grow something there, and you divert water out of the river. And then you find out that the river doesn't flow all the time, or the river is fairly warm sometimes, or it's hard to pump it up, something like that. So what happened once we learned how to pump groundwater was you put a well right next to your river, right on your sandbar, or your gravel terrace, or whatever it happened to be. And that would then produce predictable water, tended to be cooler, tended to not have as much silt, and you didn't have to worry about the surface flows as much. And that was the story of most of the planet up until World War II. What happened in World War II is we got good at turbines. And so we are now changing the planet, and like my bio, I've been able to be in many parts of the world. This doesn't tend to probably apply to you very much, but it will apply to some of your friends, and certainly if you're in Riverside, you will have seen the turbine pumps. So center pivot circle that you see for agriculture, those center pivots are a circle around a turbine pump. Everywhere on the planet, go to Google Earth, you'll see it in Saudi Arabia, wherever you happen to be. And the powerful part was before, in terms of basic wells, is you have basically two options. You drill a hole in the ground, you put various equipment down there, and one of them would be a pump that would go down, and it would pump water up. So you send electricity down, and you have a pipe, and this little pump pumps up a certain amount of water. But it turns out that they can only pump so much water. Ron would know how much, but generally enough for a family, for a small operation, for a few horses, for some irrigated agricultural use, a few acres perhaps. But now when you have a turbine pump, it turns out that the capstan is up at the top, looks a bit like this, right? So they're about this high, they're about this big around, and they then drive turbines down in the ground, and they will throw up thousands of gallons of water. Saw one in San Bernardino. It was truly breathtaking, 5,000 gallons a minute. It was almost 8 feet in diameter, but it had an amazing aquifer that could do that in the San Bernardino area, just down from the Santa Ana River. So in your world, you are probably dealing with very small amounts of yield, and probably downhole equipment. Ron would know this and can comment on it. But you will see across the industry big turbine pumps that are very expensive. They can cost the better part of $1 million to put in. If a city is putting one in, it's 1,000 feet deep and it produces a lot of water. So that's one end of the spectrum. And the big agricultural growers would have the very same thing. When I drive across Arizona, you just see them every quarter section, just lined up. Same thing with Central Valley. So there's that whole world for that kind of agriculture. You're probably on this other side of, well, a little bit of water is very helpful, necessary, and that is into a different kind of system. So as I drive around San Diego, the reason that almost no one knew much about San Diego, I started this project in 2000, was because there was no oil and gas, no mineral resources to speak of, so no one really looked below the surface of the ground, including up here, because there just wasn't much need. And there wasn't much surface water. So they didn't tend to research very much in the way of reservoirs and so forth. That changed a bit, so you had some reservoirs come in and there was some understanding. But when I started in 2000, just so you know that there's not oodles of information out there, because I get calls like this occasionally and they go, oh, what's the groundwater level in this part of the world? Good luck, we don't know. They never had any groundwater level maps in San Diego, other than in selected areas. No water budget of how much water flows into the ground, how much is pumped out of the ground. Almost no water chemistry for what the quality of the water is. Breathtaking things that you can go to almost any, certainly any basin in the United States and find out. We've done that 50 years ago. You can go to the middle of Afghanistan. We know more about Kandahar than we would in a lot of places until I started doing our homework on San Diego. So now we do tend to have more information, but you will be up against it because you'll call somebody like me and ask really simple questions. Well, how much water could I get out of the well? Well, how much water do other people get out of their wells? Well, how much recharge occurs every year so that it's going to replenish my well? Very simple questions that we have almost none of those answers for. I'm sorry. That's why Ron's important. I can maybe point to some things, and if I were a little better, I would have done homework and had something on a slide screen here that would show you all the wells that were out there, and maybe we have actually visited some of them because the Indian tribes, we've done some work, Rincon, Paula, a few things here and there. So there's not zero information, but there's probably a lot less than you would like. That's just the way it is. Your neighbors and this group probably know far more than people like me that you're going to call. So with that, you have two kinds of well settings that matter. So the one, like I say, is you've got a river, you've got the river comes down, it's got overbank deposits, just like the reason this thing's built here probably, is that this is probably an old terrace from the river or this valley. Old meaning it could have been 20,000 years ago it was created, could have been 120,000 years ago. But it's flat because some river probably leveled it out. And so whoever's growing whatever they're growing on this will have an opportunity that is pretty good to be able to put down a well and irrigate. So I'm not familiar with this part of the world, but if you're familiar at all with San Pasqual, I am familiar with that area. And so they've got sod farms and so forth. So San Pasqual drainage is, by the Wild Animal Park, is roughly the same as a lot of other similar narrow drainages. They've got sod farms. They can put down a well down about 100 feet. We've drilled wells there. The depth to hard rock, meaning granite, is somewhere between 80 and maybe 150 feet. 113 in one of ours. So that doesn't give you a lot of water. So maybe it's 10 feet to water, 20 feet to water. So now you go from 20 feet down to the bottom of the world at 100. That is not a lot of water in the scale of groundwater wells. However, it seems to be sufficient for most of the growers in that area. The other thing that you will see is that you're in competition with each other, not just for sales, but for water, if you're nearby. So the Wild Animal Park came in and they needed water. They put down a no kidding well, 500 gallons a minute into hard rock. And I don't know how deep that is, but I know the effects that now all of my wells that I'm monitoring, the groundwater levels are going down. The pressure is being reduced all the way down to hard rock. They are depressurizing the whole hard rock system. You will see this happen worldwide. Maybe not here because you don't have that many big wells, but we're in a casino. So what I usually say is I'm fairly transparent. I try not to be offensive, but I will get a call from somebody and they'll go, oh, my groundwater levels are dropping, and they'll be in East County someplace in the Hard Rock area, hills, Hard Rock hills, stuff like that. And oh, my groundwater levels are dropping. This could be you in the future if you put in a well. And I go, oh, could be the climate variability, things are hotter. But then I'll usually go, well, do you have a casino near you? And they go, well, yeah, one just went in. I go, well, isn't that curious? Because you don't operate a facility like this without a bunch of water. Then the question is, where did you get it from? This might be on the big pipes coming from Northern California and Colorado, I don't know. But some of them I know put down real wells, meaning probably the better part of $1 million to put down a big production well that will provide enough water for them. Maybe they run it through desalination, something like that. But what they're doing, unintentionally perhaps, not knowledgeable of this, is they're depressurizing the big hard rock. The hard rock has small fractures, sometimes larger, an inch or something. Sometimes these are only 1/8 of an inch wide. We have a teleview of a 6-inch fracture. You wouldn't want to bet your farm on getting something like that because these are probably rare. But those are all fractures connected through the hard rock. And so if you drill a well down, you're betting money that you're going to hit one of those fractures that will yield enough water and is connected to other fractures that will replenish that water over years, decades. That's what you're betting on. Those fractures are connected quite a ways away, miles away, to your neighbor, or to the big wells, or to the river that's replenishing those fractures. So the challenge that we have as humans is that we are now pumping in the alluvial system, meaning the sand and gravel aquifer. So if you drive up 215, you'll get to San Bernardino, the big overpass. You go to Palm Springs down 10, you go up 215, and you'll see these big, huge groundwater basins like Los Angeles has, Orange County has, San Bernardino has, Riverside has. They have pumped enough water out of that I believe that they're actually depressurizing the mountain block. That's that mountain block that you go snowboarding up on top. And I believe that this is happening worldwide because I can't see why it won't be. We're taking water from the alluvial system, and that is connected through the little fractures into the big mountain blocks. Almost no one has said this, but I don't see why it's not true because it's connected. There's no steel plates in the ground, right? It's all connected. And they wouldn't necessarily notice that, but once, way back when, I got a call from an Indian tribe. They go, our spring is drying up. Yeah, it could just be climate, could be a fire, or it could be the canary in the coal mine that we are now depressurizing the mountain blocks. So that all is something just to put in your head that you're now proposing perhaps to be one of those people taking water from the mountain block. And it may provide water for 10 years, 20 years, or 100 years, or 3 years. But the more straws in any setting, the more you're competing with each other. That's the way it is. Central Valley, anything like that. So it's a common resource. It's possible that in your plot of land, you will put down a well, probably through hard rock. Ron or somebody like that will come out and they'll drill like a 4-inch well or 6-inch, 8-inch well, something like that, with air probably. And they will give you enough water. It's unlikely that the water you get is only within the perimeter of your land. That's almost not going to be true, but I won't know the answer, and you won't know the answer until your well operates for 50 years and is pulled in water from everywhere, or there's only so much water and it works for a few weeks and you go, eh. So that is part of the riskiness of drilling in hard rock. Like I said, Ron will be able to describe that in more detail. I've drilled in hard rock. It has got a lot of uncertainty to it. If we want to go out to some gravel sandbar, some big gravel area in San Bernardino, you will get water. It's just a matter of what the quality is. How much did you want? Those things are fairly easy decisions in the sand and gravel aquifers. But avocado trees, as I've seen, tend to be on hillsides. So that probably means to me that you're going to be drilling through hard rock. And that's a whole nother game that in my mind, I walked through the casino and I go, that's pretty easy risks. Drilling is much more substantial. And I believe that that's true. So anyhow, Ron, you want to come up and we can chat or answer questions? Do people have questions? I've rambled on things, and Ron's a driller, so he actually has the background. I don't know, how long do we have? Okay, I've got a split from here in 45 minutes, but other than that, you can follow up and you can send me notes, however you want to do it. Maybe, let's field some questions and then Ron and I can go back and forth, so yeah, please.
Do you consider DG to be hard rock?
No, it was hard rock. So DG, decomposed granite, is, if you core it, you'll see that it is actually original rock, and you'll have about 8 feet of it, maybe 12 feet, maybe 3 feet, and it will transmit water just like a sand aquifer, sometimes even better. But what we do in my San Pasquale wells, for example, if you go online and see some of the data, so the reason I know this stuff in San Pasquale is that we go down with like a 12-inch hole. We will put in a 2-inch PVC piezometer, 2-inch PVC, it'll have slots in it at the bottom. We'll send that down about 60 feet, and then we'll send another one down about 100 feet into the DG, and it'll be open to that. And then we'll send another one down into the hard rock, and we'll drill a couple of 100 feet into hard rock, and then we'll isolate each of those with a grout, which is like a pudding. And so that each one is isolated, we'll pump into those and then measure water quality and water levels and so forth. And from that, we can tell that the water coming out of the alluvium has a certain chemistry to it, usually higher total dissolved solids because of the agricultural return, another issue we may have to figure out. So that will have one kind of yield in the sand and gravel. The decomposed granite will have a little lower pressure because, again, groundwater is actually going down to the big wells. Otherwise, it would be coming up. So, and then we have one in hard rock to actually see, how things are going. And we use geophysics. We drill down, use some geophysics techniques to see the fractures, and then make sure that we can get a little bit of water, meaning a gallon or two, because that's just our purpose. It's not to produce water for any other purpose other than water quality sampling. So, next question.
I had a question regarding the acquisition of water as far as locating it. What's your opinion on using either radar or sonar or some type of imaging technology and collecting that data and having it reviewed by a hydrologist and a geologist, respectively?
So Ron, why did you do this?
Depending on the area you're at, if you're up in the hills, I've been doing this since 1992, and I used a lot of scientifics, a lot of sonar, a lot of seismic, and my percentage rate was about 50% successful.
Okay.
And one day I was down in Rainbow Canyon, right down the road, and on a 400-acre farm, and I had a 3-well contract, and the first 2 wells we did seismic. We did radar. It was radar water that did the project. And he said, well, this is where your best bet is, this is where your best, and we got over here. Okay, there's 1, 2, 3 locations. By the time the second well was drilled, we only had 40 gallons on a 400-acre farm. And Jim, the farmer, was like, that's just like peeing into the lid, So he goes, Ron, get a witcher out here. Because I didn't believe in witching at the time. I'm from the oil business. When I drill an oil well, I'll use $1 million just for seismic, around the area I'm looking at, because investors don't come easy. You don't want to just blow their money. You want to get their production in the oil business. So we would do all sorts of homework. We'd do seismic, look at the production wells around there. Where in the water well business, as I said, I'm 50% with seismic. And when you're 50% as a driller and a pump installer, you're cutting yourself out of a lot of business by not getting the other 50% and installing the pumps on those wells. So I didn't believe in dowsing. And on that project, we dowsed the whole 400 acres and we went probably from here to the other side of the pool, probably a couple hundred feet. And where the seismic said there's no water there. There's no faults or nothing. Well, these other two wells I drilled were 920 feet deep, 20 gallons a minute. The well was 310 feet that we just drilled a couple hundred feet away from the location we were at. And got them close to 150 gallons a minute. But there's nothing there. I mean, the hydrologist said that. Love-hate relationship with hydrologists. Up in the rocks, today, 30-some years later, I use dowsing 100%.
Is fractured rock typically the best spots to drill for growers like us on the hills?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Remember, if you're going to drill a water well and you're talking to a driller, drillers don't get paid to find water. They get paid to drill. And at prices of today, 500, 600, 1,000 foot well will cost you $40,000, $50,000. You know, so they hit a dry well. Well, let's drill another one. That's all. Now we're talking $100,000 just in drilling, and it adds up fast. So you want to do every avenue you can to find a good location. You don't listen to the driller and say, drill there, that's the flat place. We're gonna find, that's where I can pull right my rig right in. You know, easy peasy, you know? So, I mean, I was open-minded. And after that ordeal in Rainbow Canyon, I started following different witchers around, you know, for about 7 years. I had one, I called him Tutti Frutti Rudy. And he found me water, don't get me wrong, but then he'd get on the spot, he'd get his little plim bob out, and then he'd start doing the dance. Is the water at this speed? Is the water, okay, how many gallons per minute? Is it 20? Yeah, I'm like, dude, seriously? No, that's song and dance. Where, when I'm looking, I do my own dowsing now. When I'm dowsing, I'm looking for underground rivers, is what I'm looking for. If you've got 20 acres, I'll walk the whole circumference of the 20 acres. And I'll find my sticks. When I walk about this table being a fracture, fractures could be that wide, it could be back to the back wall. And when I'm on the beach now, when I get to the fractures, my sticks will open. And as I go into that river, they'll open more. And when they wrap around my neck, good things usually happen, as far as gallons per minute, because there's a lot of energy going through there. When I'm reading the static electricity put off by the water going through the fracture, simple as that. Not witchcraft. It's static electricity.
It's just
And
magnetism, right?
Pardon me?
Just magnetism, basically, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So the only thing I would correct is it probably has white noise, so static would infer static electricity, but this is where if you had 100 people that had my background, they would go, no, that's black magic. And I go, well, there's a lot of things that we can do that we don't understand. And I started from sort of basic principles. That's what basic principles. You have water flowing. Water is bivalent, which means it's got electrical properties. That's why it can bond. You know, it's got electrons that are hanging out there. Well, when you send electrons, you have a right-hand rule, if you remember stuff in high school or you have electrical generation of magnetic fields, electrical fields. This is basic physics. So I go, oh, well, why wouldn't the water do that? The question would be, how could we perceive that? Would we have an instrument that is sensitive enough to that? So Ron would say, well, the humans are, and I would say some humans are remarkably sensitive. And I use the example that I was taught because I seem to have heart issues, and I went to a high-end cardiologist at Scripps Clinic in Torrey Pines in San Diego, and she did thousands of surgeries. She wrote a book. She's way sharp, and she observed that your heart is a electrical pump, right? So your whole body is basically neurological. And that's what fires the muscles and everything else. It's an electrical machine. And your heart is an electrical pump. And it generates an electrical magnetic field around itself. And we can measure that with this. But humans can too. So when she backed it up, she goes, you can sense as a human someone's EMF, electromagnetic field, about 2 meters away. So I can almost feel your heart in my body. So then the language is, oh, that person has a kind heart. This isn't just a phrase. This goes way back in all the cultures. And so this is high-end woman and beyond MD saying this. And I go, okay, how does this relate to dowsing? Well, it's pretty similar in that it's a very small sensor. And we can perceive that, or some people can perceive that. But let me tell you then, segue to why would you, just like Ron said, use all the information, because once you locate that drill rig, you're gonna start spending money. And it goes pretty fast. That's what I've learned. It's a lot easier for me to sit in an office for a day or two, because I charge out, I don't know, $1,500 a day or something like that. Yeah, that's about $1,500 an hour with that drill rig. So anyhow, where I screwed up in San Pasquale was I wanted to locate, and that's why I laughed with, well, let's bring the drill rig into this flat area. Why? Well, because it's easy and it's nice, and I don't have to jack it all over the place. And I've told our drillers, no, I want the well right here. Oh, that's a pain in the butt. Okay. So in any case, so I chose a nice little flat area that I thought was a good place, alluvial and so forth, in San Pasquale. And then I started thinking that I'd like to find out how deep the alluvium is, all the way down through the decomposed granite. And so I had a resistivity guy come out and do resistivity measurements, which are a way to identify the substructure, one of the geophysical tools. And lo and behold, it was like 20 feet to hard rock. And then I looked at this little flat area, and it looked like a pediment that went right up to the mountains. And I go, damn it, should have figured this out. This basic geology, you got this thing, comes down, and it's this little toe of the mountains, and it has a little bit of gravel on top of it. So we had to relocate the well to the other side of the valley. I saved myself an awful lot of embarrassment and expense, because I would have gone down 20 feet, and I might not have been related to all the wells and the production and the farming, sod farms and everything else in the valley, which was the purpose of my drilling. So this homework of talking to other people, talk to the drillers, like you said, and I appreciate you owning it, they get paid by the foot. Well, I think you need an 800-foot deep well. Well, why do you think that? Well, because my kid's in college.
That's how much drill pipe I have on
And
my
I have
rig.
the same question when I go in, so I need a crown. Are we sure I need a crown? Dennis, I mean, so there's, that homework will help you. And the body politic of humans tend to have much more knowledge than any particular individual, right? And I'm not sure that Zoom and email has really aided us in that. The Native Americans figured that out a long time ago. You get around a campfire and you share information. So that's part of what we're trying to do here. Another question, perhaps. Yeah.
I'm in San Pasquale Valley, and my pump's hanging at 180 feet. I got chlorides at 250 and TDS at 1400. If I were to drill deeper, would I find better water?
Yeah, if you go to my website, you'll see 3 wells. One's right by Cloverdale Creek.
I'm right again at Cloverdale.
Yeah. And so when I was drilling that well, it's whatever, 300 feet deep, I always put them in, there's a shallow piezometer at water table right by the creek, so it's probably 50 feet down. There's one in decomposed granite at probably, I don't know, maybe 100 something. And then there's one in hard rock down around 300. And what I found was somebody came out when we were drilling, and he said, oh, my brother runs a place here, and he's having salinity problems, which for sod is apparently, like a lot of things, not good. And so we did geophysics conductance down that hole, and we found a spike of, just like you would next to the ocean for seawater intrusion, you'd have a spike of salinity in the upper zone, which could be characteristic of this semi-arid environment that we've been in. It's been evaporating stuff for thousands of years. But generally, that water gets flushed down deeper. So generally, you would have higher salinity at depth if there's enough fresh water. But if you've been pumping it up, not you, but if we've been pumping it up, putting it on agricultural fields, it's evaporating, then those salts coming out of the rock naturally are accumulating in the shallow zone. And that's why in the Central Valley, you have the guys go down 6 feet and put in drains, flush the salts down the drains, and the drains go to the Kesterson Reservoir and others. So, yes, it will probably be better quality at depth. You can go to my website and see the stuff, talk to a few of the other guys. But unfortunately, most of the people out there who are in the industry do not know depth-dependent information. So the reason that they like the USGS to come in is we provide that three-dimensional picture, which is the sort of the answer to your question, is that if I go to San Bernardino, I can pretty well say the salinity will increase with depth. Classically. Most places on the planet that have a fair amount of rain, meaning more than 6 inches. But in places that are agricultural, it's like the Anasazi. They went out of business because of salinity. So if you just keep irrigating and you don't get rid of the salts, eventually you will have too many salts for whatever you're trying to grow. So then the question is, how do you get rid of that? San Pasquale used to flood all the way down to the ocean occasionally, maybe every 1,000 years, and it would carry the salts out. The ocean is the repository of all of the salts that come from the continent. That no longer occurs. So in the big picture, as you talk to people, accumulating salinity issues are substantial. It may take a couple hundred years, but this will become a theme that salinity is the most important contaminant out there, I've been told, and I've started to learn that that's true. Another question. Go ahead.
I'm wondering about the recharge issue. So in the Central Valley, for a while they stopped flooding. Now they do it again in order to recharge aquifers, right?
Right.
Is that possible here in any way?
So the question is, how is recharge possible here? How is enhancement of recharge possible? That's a really...
When we leach, where is our water going? Is there a chance it's recharging aquifers where we can access it again through a well? Or is it simply going away?
It's going away.
Without knowing the specifics, I can't say, but the goal of leaching the surface is to make it leave. So like I say, in the Central Valley, they have put in PVC pipes at 6 feet down that are perforated, so you leach, goes into the pipe and goes someplace else. Whatever doesn't get picked up in the pipe would end up recharging the wells, but it would be, taking off most of it. At least that's the concept. I don't know the specifics. Do you?
I'm more hard rock, and in hard rock, the top 20, 40 feet is alluvial. And if you just put it back on the ground, it's stopping at the hard rock.
Yeah.
So it's not recharging the aquifer. What's recharging the aquifer is like what we've had the last 2 years, snow. Snow in the mountains. It usually takes 9 to 12 months for that water from the nice winter we've had to get into our wetlands. And it doesn't happen overnight. As I said, the stuff we had this winter, about November, December, January, your well will start producing more water again. It's those 7, 8 years of drought is what's kicking our butts in between. I've had a lot of wells that when we drilled into them, they were 50, 75 gallons a minute. Well, at the end of the drought, those 50, 75 gallons a minute wells were producing 30. So the water, the fractures have to be reproduced, rejuvenated. ionized. And that's what our snowfall in the local mountains do. And out in the desert, we have San Andreas Fault, and faults carry a huge amount of water. You know, and that breaks off, that recharges stuff. But that doesn't get all the way over here.
Yeah, one thing I would correct, he said underground rivers, in Florida we have things like that. But in this kind of environment, we have all the alluvial system operates like when you go to the beach. So the analogy I use is you go to the beach and you dig in the sand near the ocean and it'll fill up with water. That's groundwater. Actually, when you look at it, it's surface water now, but it was groundwater a few minutes ago. So that's what all the groundwater that is in sand and gravel environments looks like. And it's not a lake, it's not a river, but it is a little bit like a lake filled with sand and gravel. So it flows through, but not as well as water that would flow through a lake. If you're in limestone, like in Florida and a few places, then you have cavities that you can walk through that really are rivers. So the groundwater there is almost like streams and it flows that way. Fracture flow, like I say, most of the fractures are very small that we've drilled through. And I've cored the material so that we actually can look at them. The earth is generally compressional, but where you have in some environments the earth is breaking apart. So think of it like an orange, the peel of an orange. If you're pulling it apart, you'll have fractures. And in San Diego, you have basically the big McCoys, the San Andreas, right? You can see it from the moon. And you have other faults like that. And as they turn, they end up allowing openings. So for part of San Diego, and the good part for you guys, is that this part of the world is not just compression, or those faults will get closed up and they'll get welded shut and good luck. I'll core it and I'll say, oh yeah, it was a fracture and it's got a bunch of iron staining and calcium, and it might be a mineral resource of some consequence, but it's not going to yield much water. But when you go around a corner, that means that the earth has to accommodate and tends to open up, and that means the fractures can open up. So between dowsing and some geophysics, you can improve your chances at that. But at least in this part of the world, it's much better than some other places where it's very compressional. But again, in those fractures, it's small, relatively, you know, maybe better than I do, but the fractures are on the scale of millimeters or a centimeter or two, right? An inch is pretty good fortune. I've seen fractures that I get in my well when I take cores. They're a millimeter, right? They're the thickness of a fingernail. But if you're not real greedy, they conduct a fair amount of water. In the best zones, they're fractured, and you have a lot of fractures, and it's like a tub of rock with fractures, and the water flows through it. Again, I would never use the term stream or river, underground rivers. I always push back on that because that connotes a lot more water than you're going to get. There are some similarities to that metaphor. Anyhow, another question? Yes, please.
Yeah, actually it's kind of two parts. First, what do you think is the best chloride, TDS, and pH levels for avocados? And secondly, I'm assuming you're using RO systems. What do you have software that gives you real-time measurements of what the chlorides, TDSs, and
So this is way outside of what I do work with a water district that uses reverse osmosis for municipal supply. But for your application, I know the basic ideas. And yeah, automated systems they have, but they're $1 million facility. So no, I don't even pretend to know that stuff.
But most water wells are right around 7.2 to 7.6 pH.
This is too hot. You gotta bring it down to about 5.5 to about 7.
you mentioned RO systems. It can be quite expensive on a big parcel of avocados, because you gotta get rid of the brine water. And that becomes the issue with the reverse osmosis system for that bigger project. Reverse osmosis systems work great for homes, you know, for your family water. But then you start putting on 20, 40, 80, 100 acres worth of trees or whatever you're growing. Now I have to have a basin to get rid of the wastewater. And the last big project I engineered, that basin was like almost 25 acres that they had to literally put the water in. So it just became unfeasible to do it that way because it took so much of their land.
Well, the chloride level you're talking about in San Pasquale, I mean, that's gonna kill an avocado for a year.
Yeah, and that's just something that we observe. I don't know it, but especially when I travel internationally, I see the same themes. We're using a lot of groundwater, we're putting it on the ground, it's evaporating, and we're increasing salts at the land surface. Just as you can pick a place. Maybe not where there's a lot of rain, right? In Oregon, okay, maybe not. Eastern Oregon, probably so. You know, so I'm speaking in generalities, and I probably would get pushback from some of my peers speaking too generally. But that's what I've tended to see. And as Ron mentioned, when I do work with reverse osmosis, because it's very powerful, the problem is getting rid of the brines. I mean, one physically, but two politically. So the reverse osmosis system in Chula Vista, the limitation for yield is how much brine they can inject, discharge into the Sweetwater River. So for you, it might be, well, okay, I got reverse osmosis and I got my holding tank over here, and it turns out that I'm sending it right down to my well and I'm gonna circulate it. Well, no, I wanna get rid of it. Well, you know, truck it, good luck, that's expensive. So that's just something to not necessarily be a panacea because of solar panels. So at Sweetwater Authority, Chula Vista, they installed a bunch of solar panels to generate the electricity to help defray the electrical costs for reverse osmosis. So reverse osmosis is magical. The membranes are much better than they used to be, much more efficient than they used to be, but you have electrical power issues and brine issues. So you had one question. Yeah.
Let me get the microphone to you. We're trying to record this. We want to capture everybody's question.
All right.
Although
I'm told I can frighten children several
you have
blocks
a
away,
moving
so.
voice, Chuck, so.
All right. This is kind of a comment and a question, and it goes back to the recharging. I have a well that is about 4 to 5 years old. We were fortunate enough to get good quality water and quite a bit of it. And I've instrumented the well fairly well, so to speak. And among the things I measure is the height of the water above the pump. The pump sets at about 700 feet in a hole that's 800 feet deep. And in the winter months when I'm not irrigating a lot, it typically sets at about 450 foot of water above the pump. In the summer, it goes down to about 300. In the winter, it comes back to about 450. In the summer, it goes back to about 300, and this has been the cycle now for about 4 to 5 years. Is that typical? It seems like that amount of motion up and down is maybe atypical for a normal well. Although the drawdown is not bad. When I turn the pump on and I'm running a couple hundred gallons a minute, it drops about 20 feet, 15 to 20 feet.
So you're very fortunate from my limited experience.
Yeah.
That's something dang good well. You know,
And that bounce doesn't sound, I mean, I don't know this data really well. I'm assuming you're in a fractured system. If you're right next to a river, that's a lot of bounce.
I set the well surface is at about 1,050 feet at elevation.
Right, so you're not near a surface
And
water feature.
so my water table, so to speak, is about 300 foot below that. So it's well above seawater, the quality of water is good, it's about 90 part per million natural rate. Yeah, well,
This relates to the issue of the recharge, which is challenging. Like to say, if you have small fractures, you need water there for a long period of time to seep in, right? So the earth has a lot of fractures at the top. Unfortunately, a lot of those fractures are plugged with clay, because you have the hard rock, the granite decomposes to clay, the feldspars do, and so they plug those near surface fractures. So you gotta be a little lucky to have fractures maybe below alluvium. So now you've got a bunch of sand and gravel, you've got fractures below that, you pile a bunch of water into the little sand and gravel area, and now you can recharge those. So like what Ron was saying, the time that you have available for recharge matters. So
Right.
having runoff coming from snowpack can recharge over a period of a few weeks or months, as opposed to this rain that happened yesterday and the water is gone by last night. You know, and so recharge, and this is where the climate variability is becoming an issue, because you have rain at different times when there's more evaporation, more wind. So that kind of recharge is very problematic, and I probably would come out to a group like this and go, well, what have you seen lately? Oh yeah, we get all this water, but we don't seem to see it in our wells as much as we used to, or something like that.
I'm assuming the water is probably entering the aquifer from below rather than coming down from the surface.
Well, it always enters from above, but the question is where above?
Well,
You know,
yeah.
it might be further
300
east.
miles to the north.
Exactly, and that could be, and it's all about pressure, right? So it's like a water bed. You push here, and it goes all the way.
Right.
So it doesn't have to necessarily be the molecules that got all the way to your well. It just has to be a pressure effect from some, you know, at your height, maybe it intercepted some river that is recharging all day, every day that it flows. I was up in Iowa a while, Strawberry Creek flows all the time. Why is it in a creek? Well, there's probably a fault under it. That's why the creek's there. You know, and so all of these things go together. How much of them we know, I can talk in generalities, but even if I were doing research in a specific area, like I was in San Pasqual, it becomes more difficult. So, more questions, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, do you do horizontal directional drilling at all? in the slopes?
The USGS has, but we rarely do that. Yeah, so we don't even, so the USGS is a research drill rig, so the reason we do that is for extensometers, land subsidence in the Central Valley, quantifying water supply, looking at changes in water quality, tracking long-term climatic trends, seawater intrusion, issues like that. Directional drilling, I've been very impressed with from the oil industry, but no.
I only use it in the oil industry. You know, I've never used it in the water industry.
Is USGS, is that your company name, or is it tied to the US Geological Survey?
Correct.
It is, the latter?
Yeah. So I work for the U.S. Geological Survey, Department of the Interior. You pay tax dollars to somebody, water district, federal government, whatever. So I'm here, thank you for paying your taxes. Or actually, I work mostly off of water districts, counties, cities, and water fees like that. Yes?
What's your website address?
The website address, it'll be a handout. If you search water and USGS San Diego, you'll find my website. It's San Diego Hydrogeology. Pretty easy to find.
Wes, I'll distribute your information to everybody.
And for the people that, so I've done work in Temecula, San Bernardino, and quite a bit in San Diego, and I have real-time groundwater monitoring wells that may be of interest to you. So these are typically wells that have maybe 1,500 feet deep, and they have 5 or 6 piezometers. These are 2-inch PVC. They're put in to monitor a specific depth in water levels, water quality. There are real-time transducers measuring water levels every 15 minutes. That information is sent to the satellite, goes onto my webpage, so you can track at each of those sites. So I have 4 in Temecula, better part of 30 in San Bernardino, 16 in San Diego. And you will see also on the website, we do water quality, pretty broad range of water quality, including isotopes, age of the water, things like that. And that would be my best way to communicate to you guys, sort of like a stream flow gauge. You want to see, can you kayak on the Russian River? You go to the USGS stream gauge and you'll see the fluctuations in the flow of the river. This is essentially exactly the same thing only for the groundwater system. Yeah.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
I've been waiting. My name's Jennifer. I have a farm in Fallbrook, and I have 2 wells. One is dry at 1,500 feet. We dug. Everybody around us has water, like really a lot of water, but we didn't have anything there. And I was wondering, it was in August, and could it be that it was just a dry time? Could we go back in and test it at another time of year to see if there is water, and if so, how much would that cost? I have the one at the top of my grow, because that's way down at the bottom. The one at the top was dug in 91, and it went to 1,100 feet. They got 1 gallon a minute. So we had it retested a number of years ago. I think I spent like $1,000 to retest it, and it got 11 gallons a minute. And we still didn't put it into production. I'm looking for a submersible pump for it. Do you perhaps sell those at a reasonable rate that I could put one in?
Yes, I'd be more than happy to help you out with that.
Because I can't find one under like $13,000 for somebody to come and put that in.
Yeah.
And since I've waited, it's now gone up to 18,000, and I'm like, seriously, I'm not making that much here, so it's kind of doesn't
So
make
the other
sense.
thing you can do is, water is a conductor of electricity. So one of the cheap ways that we do to figure stuff out is you just send down something with a current, and if there's water in the bottom of your well, it'll buzz. So I don't know that the industry has this, but I know that we've done that. Just going, well, when does water come in or out of one of our piezometers? For example, our shallow ones are water table, and sometimes they're dry. And the field office is going, well, why are we going out there every time to look at them? So we tend to put in some sort of monitoring device that's there all the time. And you don't have to, the expense of having a person come out is quite a bit. So the USGS routinely has automated systems out there because it's a whole lot cheaper to buy the automated system than to have a person in a truck go out. So there may be a way to monitor some of what your questions are with a little bit of hardware. But depending on who you deal with, they may want to go out. So you have to ask the right question.
I have one of those in my truck, by the way.
And actually, we have them there. Yeah, you could do like the typical static. Yeah. So there, you can have one that's on a reel. We use them all the time. Pretty sound. So yeah. So there. In the old days, we used to use a steel tape. Go down, measure, look at the steel tape. Now you just simply go down with electrical and it buzzes.
So they're both capped off. How hard is it to take those caps off?
A wrench, or
Capped off, welded cap.
Maybe, I'm not sure. It looks like they're screwed.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. So yeah.
I had 2 questions. I have an automated system, and I was wondering if there's a device or something like a software program that I could take my data to better understand my recharge rate on my well.
And you have what kind of system?
An automated system. So I was just curious if there was a particular device that would tell me my recharge rate, or if I could input data I have from my system. 'Cause I have data from running my system, from my flow and everything else. And my second question, and I don't know if this is more speculation, but I've talked to a few growers, and I've heard that not every well drilling company has equipment to properly drill in our type of fractured rock conditions. And so a few times I've heard that they've come out and they get 1,000 feet or 1,200 feet, and then they can't go further, and then you're kind of stuck with the big drill. But if they could have gone another 500 feet or 1,000 feet, they would hit water. But the equipment they had was, for whatever reason, older or inadequate. The power. Is this speculation or is this true?
Well, all the drill rigs, I'll say for what drill rigs are expensive, and the mom and pops usually are a mom and pop, and maybe it's just one or two guys drilling in a pretty small rig, and they are limited by the hydraulics they have, how far they can pull back, what they can go through. So for example, our one well, we went 1,500 feet, and people always ask me, why'd you go 1,500 feet? And I go, well, we had 1,500 feet of drill steel. But the reason we had 1,500 feet of drill steel was it was getting hard to hold more weight on the drill steel, and the rig really was straining, so we could go to 1,800, but then could you all pull all that stuff out of the hole? You know, you need a certain amount of hydraulic capability, and when I drive around, I'm amazed at the mom and pop drill rigs. I go, wow, you got that at a garage sale and you made it work for the last 30 years. But if you're drilling 200 feet, you can do it a lot of different ways. My God, when the rig came out that we got almost oil company style rig, it drills 5,000 feet. It's a scary machine. Completely different, couple $1 million a piece, for each one of these drill rigs. So yes, you can get a better rig, but they're expensive to operate, and they tend to need to go, so we only use that big rig for drilling deep because it's pricey, it's big, you gotta locate it. So that's my perspective. For the for the industry that you're talking about, I don't know what's out there.
As far as going deeper into that well, my deepest hole I've drilled is 6,400 feet. Yeah, so I know deep. And I would never own that same rig out here in California. The rig that I use will go down about 2,000 feet. And every time I drill a hole, a lot of drillers do not use stabilizers in their rig because it slows the drilling down, causes more drag. Stabilizer, you have a hammer on an air drilling. Hammer's about yay tall, then it's 6 inches or 8 inches depending on the size of the hole with a bit. Well, the stabilizer is the next 20 foot up, 10 to 20 foot up. And it's 6 inches or 8 inches wide. The stabilizer keeps that hammer straight. I mean, if there's anything to the science of this, or even to the dowsing part of it, if I have an area from here to here, and I drill here, I don't want to end up over here. Without the proper drilling equipment, I'll end up over here. Because it will hit something down there, and that'll just start following it down. Because right away, if you don't have a stabilizer, you go from a 6-inch hammer to a 4-inch drill steel. And you've got an annulus around there, and so that pipe will follow that bit wherever it wants to go. So you got to have a good drilling company that knows what the heck they're doing. As far as taking a 1,500 foot well deeper, most of my water, I've drilled probably 1,000 wells in Southern California since I've been doing this. And that's from 1992 to today. And most of my water, I hit before 900 feet. Easy. I've drilled one water well in this whole area down to 1,900, I think it was 2,000 feet. And that was up at Valley Center for the municipal water. I had I had a hydrologist out there and had a bunch of other people say, well, the water is down at 2,000 feet. And I'm like, sure. But they proved me wrong. I mean, there was water down there. Every time I've been on a well that's gone down past 1,200 feet, it's definitely a crapshoot. If you don't hit the water, the majority of the water by 1,200 feet, odds are you're not going to hit it. There's drillers around here that go 18 to 2,000 feet. Again, they get paid by the footage. And sure, if you want to keep going deeper, I'll drill. That's not the right way to do it. I mean, it's in finding the water before you drill and making sure you're on the right part of your property. Taking a what'd you say, a 1,400 or 1,800 foot well deeper, I would be against it.
That sounds to me sort of like he said that the earth is heavy and compressional. So you have 1,000 feet of material on top pushing down. And that pressure is distributed everywhere, not just vertically, right? So good luck keeping a fracture open. So at least the conversations I have with the people that worry about like the nuclear waste repository, and is a fracture going to conduct radionuclides to the Colorado River. So they worry about fractures a lot, and they dropped many, many hundreds of millions of dollars trying to answer those questions. The fractures tend to close up, just about like you said. And I don't know what the magic is, but at 400 feet, 800 feet, things start happening, or they don't. But down below 1,000 feet, then you've got to really be lucky and hit something weird. But some of this is not rocket science, it's easier than that. You have, as I learned in geology, the Earth landscape is not happenstance. There are reasons the Earth looks the way the Earth looks. Streams don't just by happenstance go down this path. There's softer rock, there's an original fracture, there's a landslide, there's something that happened that got it here. And then once it stays there until something else happens. So when I looked at things, they had a witcher come out to, I lived in Scripps Ranch, and McMillan Development had $1 billion of property, and they had dust control and so forth, so they needed water, a serious amount of water. And so they witched a well site, and I go, well, this makes a lot of sense because it's at the juncture of two little canyons. Precisely where, I don't know. So like Ron said, you might be able to improve your chances, but background from air photos and so forth will give you some basic ideas before you get somebody on site going, well, this, to my eye, looks like a potential area of increased fractures. Tell me more. You know, that kind of thing. As opposed to, well, I've made mistakes here. I really want the well over here. Well, Wes, I did this in Owens Valley when I was young. Oh, there's no power there. Yeah, that's $100,000 to run power to your well. Oh, I guess it could have been over here. I was naive. So doing your homework ahead of time. But I would have to agree that there are a lot of fractures within the upper 100, 200 feet. A lot of those are plugged, and the water quality probably is not very good. Because you see this in the granite, right? The granite peels off, right? So granite is homogeneous, typically. It's the white rock that weathers to sort of a tannish or reddish. The hard rock that's the same color as the gray here in the carpet, that's metavolcanic, it's old or volcanic rock. It tends to fracture differently. It tends to fracture vertically. But the granite that's out here tends to cleave off. So the granite is down about 5 miles. It comes up and it unweights, right? So it doesn't have 5 miles of material on top of it anymore. So it slowly peels off, and you'll see this, that it tends to have fractures like the orange peel. And so you'll have these fractures that can be quite extensive in the near surface. And you may have vertical fractures also. But the granite I've found has a different kind of character to it. So if you're fortunate and you get one of those unweighting type of superficial, sort of like onion skin type things, peeling off parts of the onion skin, you'll get those fairly high in the formation. Maybe down to 400 feet, I don't know. But by the time you get to depth, if you're down at 5,000 feet, it's going to be, tight. So at some point you gotta
The average
pay your
well,
money in a different environment.
the average water well between in San Diego, I deal in Riverside and San Diego County. I've been, as I said, since 1992. These are my two counties because I live in Temecula. My average well when I first got into this was between 400 and 600 feet depth. The average well. Now it's between 500 and 800 feet. It had, people with, up in Anza, for instance, you got a lot of illegal growers up there, and they're putting illegal wells everywhere. And the people that have been there forever, they had a 40-gallon a minute well, now it's down to 5. They're definitely sucking it out. But the average depth isn't isn't 1,500 to 2,000 feet deep. I mean, again, I don't get much water that deep. I mean, I wouldn't put any more money into that. If you want to know my opinion, I would do better water study and start from scratch. Is what I would do.
You can consider dynamite.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just doing a time check. You
Yeah.
said you had a.
I've got to hit a flight to, out of San Diego here, so I've got maybe time for a couple more questions.
And maybe we'll do also, because I know Ron has a presentation and I'd like him to try to get to it as well. So we'll do, Matt, and then we'll do John, and then we can let,
I get the floor.
So a couple years ago, I had a well drilled out, San Diego County. It's been running fine, but a couple years after I drilled it, somebody came and left me a little business card at my gate, and it was advertising their services, which happened to be fracturing, like fracking.
Fracking a water well.
Yeah, and I was, you know, it's held up fine. I didn't need the service, but I was curious, is this extraordinary black magic? Or
No, absolutely not. I was actually considering getting another fracking truck. I did fracking back in the 90s. Had a company do it with me. Now, a frac, normally a successful frac is taking a 5-gallon a minute well to a 10-gallon a minute well, doubling the amount. I've taken 2-gallon a minute wells to 100-gallon a minute wells. That isn't the normal. The only reason fracking works is because they had a dowser or geophysics out there, and this is where the location is. Well, back to that stabilizer on the drilling rig, well, that stabilizer ended up out here and out of the water zone. Now, the frac won't reach way out here. You know, it will not. Frac will reach out here, and they'll catch that drill strip, the hole. You know, the hole the frac will find its way back into the underground fracture. And that's how fracking works. In the oil business is to open up your formation so the oil and gas can have an avenue to get to the hole. Same dang thing in the water well business. You know, you're fracking it. When I frack it, I put a packer in the hole, seal off the top. The packer's got a pipe that goes through it. I start injecting a ton of water down it. You know, I'll show up on location with 2 water trucks with 7,500 gallons worth of water. And I'll pump it, and all of a sudden my pressure will go up, and all of a sudden it goes, boop! Now that water has found its avenue. And when that happens, when we put the test pump in, good, you know, it's usually double the production. As I said, I've taken it to 100 gallons a minute, and it stood. Test of time.
You see that last for a long period of time?
Yes. So, I mean, but it's got to be close to the fracture for it to work. And that's the only way fracking works in a water well.
Do you typically see it ever be a waste of time, or?
Yeah, I'll literally witch it first. And if there's nothing there, trying to make something out of nothing usually doesn't work. And that's what the guy trying to sell it will say it works every time. But, I want your business next year too. And I want you to talk to your neighbors. I don't want to be that guy that came over there and he sold me a bill of goods, No, once you call me up and say, yeah, I'd like to frack, I want some information on fracking. Well, as I said, I come out and do a study. And if there's nothing there, I'm not going to recommend fracking. If the hole's here and my sticks are doing this, I'm going to say, let's give it a shot. That's without a doubt. Because it works. But it's got to have certain.
So the other thing that I would do in my world, which may or may not be available for you guys, is I would do a sonic run with geophysical tool. And you go down and you just see all the fractures. And you might, and so when I worked with Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, they're up in volcanic material. This is fairly recent volcanic material in Owens Valley. I mean, not recent, but nevertheless, very permeable. And they would literally take dynamite in the old days because you didn't have other fracking things. And so you might be able to understand something about the fractures in your well. And then you have the ability to increase them and increase the flow to other adjacent fractures. So that concept, what I've seen when I put in my piezometer, and I feel lucky because everybody goes, you're gonna put a well in hard rock and get enough water out to get the mud out, which is a bit, and then take a water quality sample. So I have never put in a well that I have not made water in hard rock, albeit a gallon or two a minute, not like the kind that you would want. But the sonic tool, which again is gonna be costly for somebody to come out, has been very useful because you can see the fracture zones. And that might be worth $1,000 before you abandon a well you just dropped 50,000 in. Something like that. But going deeper doesn't make sense. Other than, I always like to drill deeper because I might find something interesting, but that's a research thing. That's not what I would do if I had orange groves or dryland farming. Yeah.
Have you ever drilled and got oil or gas?
I'm originally an oil and gas driller.
Yeah.
So
Accidentally.
out here, no, I found gold. I was drilling down in San Diego, down by Alpine, and all of a sudden my sample, my cuttings pile had a gold tinge to it, then it right back to gray. I literally had a miner following me around down there and going through the drill cuttings after the fact for a little bit of gold. But other than that, no oil, no gas. I mean, again, I don't believe in drilling super deep. I'm not saying if we don't drill 4,000 or 5,000 feet deep, we won't find it. But there's just no, I haven't found any shallow.
You don't want to find it in the way we did. We drilled in Long Beach and hit a gas pocket, sent 50 feet
That's
of
no
real
fun.
steel into the air. Yeah.
All right, John?
When you witch, do you have any idea at what depth the water is?
I don't.
How do you know how deep to drill when you
I don't.
find water?
I mean, I wish I could say it's that. I wish I could do that dance. And I can't. I mean, that's just a bunch of malarkey. That's some guy trying to get more attention and sell you a bill of goods. I can't tell you how many gallons per minute it is. As I said, when my sticks wrap around my neck, good things happen when I drill. I've seen more 100 gallons a minute wells when those sticks wrap around my head than not. When they open like this, you have 40 acres. I'm gonna say, man, this is all we have. I'm not recommending you drill a well because that, a well's what 2 years of city water that you can pay for. So no, I would not recommend that.
Oh, what's your lead time?
So,
Like, if we
forgive
wanted-
me, but I'm 15 minutes past my
Geological survey, and a lot of experience in this area. He knows it like the back of his hand. So I'll send you his information and contact if you want to get.
general information, and if you, we do have monitoring and we do have some knowledge, and I'm always curious about your questions, so you can call me, I'll chat, but Southwest is not gonna wait for me. So, thank you, take good care.
Thank you for coming.
All right, so Ron will formally introduce you as the president and owner of Artesian Well and Pump Services. Everybody hopefully received his handout, and then Ron, I'll let you
Go from there.
discuss this, how you have a
I don't
plan.
have any competition anymore.
You don't? It's on you.
Awesome. Lead time to drill, is that what your question was?
Yes.
You can expect about 2 months.
So before you think, hey, we want to possibly put a well in, you'll come out like a couple months to take a look.
First things first, I come out, we do a water study to see if you have water. As I said, drilling dry holes does not do me any good. I mean, period.
And the cost for that assessment?
So say that again?
What do you charge for that?
Depends on how many acres you have. Normally 20 acres, you're talking about between $400 and $500. Depends on how much of this you got going on.
Right.
If it's level, it's straight $400. 5 acres, shoot, I'll do it for a couple $100. You know, it depends on how big the property is. I mean, if you got 100 acres, I'm gonna be spending a couple days out there. Cause I'm gonna be tracking the fractures I call them fractures. He said they're this big that I am. I've watched when I'm drilling through a fracture, it'll be drilling really hard and all of a sudden it'll drop 5-10 feet. That's your underground river. I've literally pulled up river rock from drilling in it, you know? So, I don't know where you got the millimeters from, but, yeah.
What's the deepest you can go? 2,000?
Deepest I can go. Okay. The deepest I can go. I got rigs that'll go 2,500 feet deep. You know, but I don't recommend it. I mean, unless there's obvious signs like wells around us. And when I do homework, when I do a research, for instance, I'll get on the website and I'll look for all the permitted wells in the area. And if your neighbor has a well at 1,500 feet and it's doing 500 gallons a minute or 100 gallons a minute or 15 gallons a minute, and this neighbor's got one at 50 feet, or excuse me, 100 feet that is doing 100 gallons a minute, and this neighbor's, you know, over here has got a dry well, I take it all into consideration. You know, every well you drill, just because your neighbor has a high producing well, doesn't mean you're gonna have a high producing well. And it doesn't mean if it's at 400 feet deep, yours isn't gonna be 1,000. I mean, that's the rule of thumb in drilling. You just never know. I wish my witching sticks could tell me that, but they can't. As I said, the only indication I get is how far those sticks wrap around my neck. And that's when the water's going through the fracture, underground river, whatever you want to call it, the more water is putting off more energy, and it's, as I said, it's static electricity. I don't know what it had to do with the heart, but it's the same thing, it's static electricity. And the faster that water is moving, the more static electricity it's producing, and that's causing the sticks. I didn't believe in witching when I got into this business. I'm from the oil business. As I said, I spent more of your all's money doing it the scientific method for 50%. All I know is when I dowse, right now I'm 100% successful in dowsing since 2010. And here it is in 2024. I have not drilled a dry well. I have not drilled a well that's produced 5 gallons a minute. Most of my wells are between 15 and 100 gallons a minute. So, go ahead.
For a large part of the state, and I've got farmland in Ventura County, there is increasingly government oversight and restrictions, and, you know, like for example, in Ventura County, the local water agency has actually imposed allocation limits in terms of the amount of water. And our wells are monitored, you know, I mean, it's very hard to even get a permit now
Yes.
to drill. What's the political landscape in terms of that?
Down in this area, depending on where you drill. If I can go get a permit, if San Diego gives me a permit, I haven't had much like you have up there. I haven't had that. In Temecula, for instance, where Vail Lake is, I can't drill under Vail Lake because, you know, Rancho Water can turn on all the wells there and drain the fracture, and drain the basin.
How about the Luz Rancho, California?
The Luz, I drilled my first well in the Luz in 1992. I had the water, one of the head guys in Rancho Water sitting there in his pickup truck the whole time. Kept telling me, well, you know you're doing this, you're wasting your time, you're wasting the guys. We're gonna put a meter on it. We own that water. BS. Not one well up there since I've been doing this has a meter on it. You know, they can say they own the water. No, they do not. You know, if Riverside County gives me the permit, there is no stipulations on that well. Period. You know, they can tell you everything they want to tell you, but what is true? They're a government entity. You know, you got to do your homework. In Ventura, they got you by the neck. You know, a lot of counties, LA, same way. I don't go to LA to drill wells. They've made it so political, it's not even fun. You know, if you're gonna not have fun doing your business, why bother? Ventura County, I go up there to do pump systems on already existing wells. I do not do any new projects up in Ventura County. I love my Ventura County customers, but I'm dealing with existing wells. So the political, in California, you know, up in the San Joaquin Valley, up north, they're saying they're gonna put meters on every well. You know, they're really trying, the government's trying to take hold of that system to make more money. Down here, we haven't had that issue so far. Go ahead.
So can you hold on so I can get you the microphone?
Oh.
And then maybe this will be the last question, and we'll give you 10 minutes to walk us through your handout there. And then we'll pick up again. We've got about another 15 minutes.
I'm not particularly technical, but we have solar on our property. I was told that you cannot use solar to power a water pump unless you have like a variable frequency drive.
Every solar system, I do have a frequency drive on my pump system, and it doesn't cost much more money than the old pressure switch and pressure tanks. So that's not an issue. I mean, if you have solar, let's use it. It's free power. That's what having our own water is all about. Not having to pay Big Brother for our water. Not having to pay Big Brother for our electricity. You know, being self-sufficient, mostly in the avocado business. And this is where I started with avocado growers. I used to love my free avocados. Being self-sufficient is the most important thing you can do. Because you all are spending so much money on chemical and on your fertilizing, on your health, you know, keeping your avocados, picking your avocados. I mean, you're spending a ton of cash. If you can get rid of the electrical and the water, my God, now you're making money. Now you can laugh at the $1.60 some dollars because you don't have 50 cents or 60 cents or 70 cents into the cost of that avocado. You know, so that's why I love this business. I mean, I've gotten the filters to start helping people out because I went through cancer, for instance. You know, I love water. I mean, helping farmers out, helping them eliminate their water bill, the best thing I can do. And it's a dang good feeling.
Why don't you start doing your presentation and explain to them how you do the dowsing, how you walk the property, how you flag the property, finding the rivers underground, how you cross the tracks, you know, get them through that so they understand your process, and that's how they're going to understand why you have a better success rate
than the hydraulics. As I said, the dowsing, as I said, I didn't believe in it when I came to this business. Did not believe in it at all. And again, as I just said, I'm 100% doing it. When I do a water research, I come out and I walk the whole circumference of the property. I will follow and I'll flag that river all the way through your property. And I'll flag it on your neighbor's property if there's not a fence there. I'll keep pushing it out. I want to make sure it's established fracture. You know, I don't want it to peter off and disappear. Then I'll have it flagged this way. Then I'll look for fractures that are crossing. And sometimes I'll even get a third one that's coming across the same set. If I have 3 fractures in that area, in that section, that's where we drill. If I have 2 fractures where X marks the spot, that's where we drill. But if my stick's open that much, the only time I'll drill there is if you have a mobile home or a house you're building and you need water for your house. Because as growers, 5 gallons a minute's not going to do you much good. Depending on how many acres you have. If you have 10 gallons a minute, 20 gallons a minute, 30 gallons a minute, I can make that work with a storage tank system and a booster pump system. You know, we just we get you a 10, 15,000 gallon head start, And then you turn your well on and turn your watering system on, and at the same time, the well's feeding the tanks. So that all comes into designing the system specifically for the amount of water that we have. Because you don't want to spend $50,000 and not get anything from it. You know, and for me to say 10 gallons a minute is nothing, well, 10 gallons a minute is a lot. It adds up in 24 hours. You know, so with a storage tank system, the next day we have ample enough water to do a lot of the water. Now, if it doesn't equal that, well, we add a little bit of the city water into it. So now you're paying a heck of a lot less for the city water, and you're kind of self-sufficient. But big wells are nice because you don't have storage tank problems, systems, and your cost comes down quite a bit. Back to the dowsing, as I said, I wouldn't do a well in Southern California without dowsing. Out in Palm Springs, I will hire a hydrologist because he knows the basin more. There are certain areas for mud wells, reverse circulation wells, that I will use as much scientific advice as I can get. But out in here, no. It's all about witching, all about dowsing, you know, and numbers don't lie. Numbers do not lie. I'm 100% successful with dowsing. I mean, that's the bottom line. On geophysics, or hydrologists and all that, I'm 50%. I'm the same percentage as pulling the rig up and going to the easiest place to drill. You know, that's not good numbers to me. So, in the brochure, I go over a little bit about, you know, what he is, a hydrologist, seismic. Sure, if we have lots of money, I'll run radar water on top of hydrology. As I said, I'm kind of a scientist too. And this comes from being in the oil business. You know, you gotta use a lot of science to drill oil wells. And as much information as I can get, I will use for sure. But I don't use much seismic. It all depends on my customer. Now the different types of drilling I got in here. Air rigs, I use air rigs the most out here. You know, I'll get your hole done within 3 to 4 days. Sometimes I'll have water and be, you know, putting the mass down in the rig in the same day I set up. You know, if we have to go 300-400 feet and I hit all the water you need, it's a good day. But most wells average about 3 to 4 days on the air drilling. Mud drilling, it's a little bit more of a step. Mud drilling is when I'm drilling in loose sand, clay, gravel, stuff like that, where I have to use a different rig. Well, I'll use the same rig with a different setup, and I'll use a roller bit, and I'll inject bentonite mud down the hole to keep the hole open. Where the air drilling in rock, it's just like if you ever see the core of a sidewalk, it's that clean. You know, you don't have stuff falling down on top of your drill steel, on top of your bit. Where in mud drilling, your hole's always wanting to collapse. So, and mud drilling is a lot more expensive, and takes about a week's time. Cable tool drilling, I've owned a cable tool. It was a great idea, great thought. I thought I could save my customers a lot of money, but 30 days later, sometimes 2 months later, your hole gets done. It's too dang slow for me. Best hole in the world, as straight as you can get, but you know, the length of time doesn't work. It just makes people mad when it takes 2 months to drill a hole. So, mud rotary, as we just discussed, mud rotary drilling, reverse circulation drilling, those are on big wells. I mean, it takes a big footprint on the drill location to run a reverse circulation rig. I have to have mud pits, I have to have mud pumps. It's more like drilling an oil well. You know, it's a big location. On the next part of this, pumping and storage tank systems. Well, storage tank systems, if we don't have the water, as we were just discussing, that's how I get the water you need. I take what God gives us and I make it work. And as I said, it's very efficient. I mean, the picture that I have up there, that's a 40-acre avocado grove and vineyard. And son of a gun, if we don't run a lot of that off 7 gallons a minute. I mean, honest to God, 7 gallons a minute. That well never shuts off. It's always filling those tanks. And he's gonna be drilling a new well, but for some reason he has, and he loves storage tanks. But he pulls it off. So even 7 gallons a minute can water 40 acres done.
How many planted acres?
Oh, on that property, probably about 25.
Where is it?
This is up on 79 up in Temecula.
Is he supplementing with district water?
No,
The
there's no water out there other than that 7 gallon.
That's impossible.
He starts with all sorts of tanks. He doesn't have a whole boat. He got more grapevines than anything.
Okay.
And that's why it's working. If it was all avocados, he couldn't do it.
Well, that wouldn't be enough for 3 acres of avocado.
Yeah.
It would not.
No, I understand that. No matter how much of a head start. But he takes it to the extreme. And hopefully I can get him a lot more water on the next drill. But that's what we have to work with.
That was an existing well?
Yes.
Oh, so you didn't drill that?
No, that well's 50 feet deep. I got the pump set at 40. So it's right down, it's an old well that's drilled down to bedrock and stopped. And they gravel packed it and called it a day. Gravel pack is when you stick a PVC liner down and put gravel around the PVC liner. Gravel pack helps filter the water a little bit, but it keeps the hole open more than anything. And your pump systems all are designed to the depth of the well, where the static line is, the static level, where the natural pressure of the ground pushes the water up the hole, and the gallons per minute. That's how we design a pump system. As I say, it all depends on what God gives you on your new well. You know, if you got 5 gallons a minute, I put a 5 gallon a minute pump system in it.
Is that your last name?
Say that again?
Is that your last name?
What? God? No, I wish. So when it comes to pump systems, we design it to what you have. And normally if you have a 100 gallon a minute well, I won't put a 100 gallon a minute pump in. Because we have fluctuations in our water, as we've discussed here. And the end of a drought, that 100 gallons a minute might be 50 gallons a minute. I haven't seen that big a drop, but I have seen 40 gallons a minute drop on 100 gallons a minute well. And the static is lower. So, rule of thumb, if you got 100, I'll put a 50 gallon a minute pump in it. If you got 25 gallons a minute, I'll put a 12 to 15 gallon a minute pump in it. I don't want to over pump the well. This is my main goal. Over pumping any well is not good. Go ahead.
Getting to the point of going deeper, I have a friend of mine not far from my house, and he had a 750 feet deep well. The well performed for him for 2 years, and it was out of water. They came and they drilled it to 1,200 feet, nothing. He just wasted all that money.
Yeah.
Going from 750 to 12.
It's a gamble. As I said, my average well is between 500 and 800 feet. I can't really advise you to go take a 1,500 foot deep well down to 2,000 feet. Yeah. I mean, just taking money and throwing it away, as far as I'm concerned.
Can you give us a ballpark figure of, let's say you went 500-600 feet and it's doing 80, 100, what it would
cost?
An approximate cost. I know it can't be exact because it varies from location, including the pump and including everything else.
In the last 3 years, our prices, everybody in here has seen price increases on everything. for instance, those green plastic 5,000 gallon storage tanks that you see everywhere, my cost on them just before the last president, or at the 2020, my cost on those were about $2,000. Today, my cost on that same tank is $4,600. Same tank, you know, just PVC, pipe, everything, fuel, everything has gone up. Where an average cost of a well with pump system before this madness was about $50,000. Now, average cost is $60,000 to $70,000 for drilling and pump. Where drilling is going to take a lot of that up. Drilling will average. If you're lucky enough to hit it shallow, you can get out of there with $15,000 of cost. But that doesn't happen all the time. I mean, you're on footage. If you hit it shallow, you win. You know, it's a win-win. It's when you go deeper and deeper and deeper, it gets more expensive. Now, when I start off with the well, I'll drill a 6-inch test hole. I won't start off with a 10-inch or an 8-inch. I'll start off with a 6, because 6-inch hole is $21 a foot. 8-inch hole is about $29 a foot. 10-inch hole is about $40 a foot. And the bigger the hole, the more money you're going to charge per foot. So out of the 6-inch hole, I can get up to about 75 gallons a minute out of the 6-inch hole, depending on the depth. So out of the 6-inch hole, I hit a big water. Then I come back up and I'll ream it out to an 8-inch hole so I can get a bigger pump down the hole. Submersible pump, a 4-inch submersible pump, I can get, as I said, 75 gallons a minute out of it. That's a 6-inch hole. That's the biggest pump I can put down a 6-inch hole. Liners I run are about 4.5 inches. Now, as I said, if I have a lot of water production, I will open it up to 8-inch so I can get a 6-inch pump down there. And now I can get up to 900 gallons a minute out of it. You know, the bigger the well, the bigger the pump, the more room I need for the bigger pump. So that's a good thing. Now your 600-foot hole just went up to $60,000 because we made it bigger. And now your bigger pump system's going to cost you more money than the 4-inch pump system. Those are all good costs once you find water. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you talk about filtration systems? I've got a well that's sort of junk out of it, accumulating at the bottom of the hill in the skitters.
Are you getting a lot of iron manganese or blackish? Yeah, that would be manganese. We got a lot of iron and manganese problems. What I use is a Lakos filter up top. So it comes out, it goes in the Lakos filter, and I have an automatic purges it once a day, and it gets a lot of it out. Doesn't get all of it out, but it will get a lot of it out. And then if it doesn't get it all, we'll put a secondary filter system on it. Go ahead.
I know of a producer in Culver who has a well with that problem, the iron bacteria.
Yes.
His pump was burned out twice in 1 year.
Yeah, and you look in the back and it says maintenance.
So
That stuff will kill pumps fast.
quickly, yeah.
It's like the mud. I mean, you've got a PVC liner going down at the bottom of the hole. That PVC liner's got perforations in it. And when that mud comes into the hole, first thing it does, it goes through the perforations on the PVC liner and starts clogging that up. And then the pump itself, it's got a screen on the bottom of the pump where the water gets sucked in. The motor's on the bottom of the pump, the pump's on top, and the water will come into a screen and it'll go up through the pump and up to the top of the hole. Well, that screen starts getting clogged. Now the pump's going without water, it burns itself up. And the friction that might cost goes into the disc of the pump. Well, that's why motors go off. I mean, motors are made to spin freely. So you put some friction in there, more amps, and the motors don't last that long. How I handle this, depending on the severity of the iron manganese problem, most wells don't have to be treated once a year. But once a year, I'll come pull everything out. I will run a round wire brush down to the bottom of the well on a sand line. And I'll work that, and I'll clean all the perforations first in the liner. And then I will dump, depending on the size of the hole and the depth of the well, I'll dump up to, I just did one down the road from here in my housing development. On that well, I use 4 5-gallon buckets. And at $500 a bucket, this stuff gets expensive real fast. But it's a lot of acid and some well cleaner in it. And we'll dump that down it after we take the pump out, let it sit for a few days, put the pump back in, and pump the stuff out onto the ground. And that's gonna clean all that stuff, that iron manganese. Now, as I said, on severe problems, do it once a year. Most of the times, average maintenance is every 2 to 3 years on that. It depends on how much you have. And it's becoming a worse problem all the time as far as that's concerned. I mean, I don't know if the drought caused it, but I'm seeing a huge amount of iron manganese in my wells. Go ahead.
So can I interrupt you? Sorry, James. We're a little over our time. So if anybody has to leave, we understand. This is a good discussion. I don't want to interrupt the questions or anything, but
That's okay. They can walk out on me.
Exactly. Exactly. So
I got
I just want to let you know we probably have the room for another 10 minutes or so.
Any questions?
Yeah. So I will give this back to you. Go ahead, James.
All right, so I've heard some people that had some wells drilled and then, excuse me, the water had a lot of salt in it.
Yes.
And the salt, of course, avocado is really sensitive to salt. And so they are having problems with that, and then maybe they have to put in a salt filtration system that's more money. I don't know if you've run into that.
There's been all sorts of salt filters out there. Only way to get rid of salt is reverse osmosis. I mean, I tried, they've got these bearings that are supposed to reshape the molecule. I haven't had any luck with them. You know, once I put that in, avocados can handle, I think, what, up to 1,200 TDS safely. And that's very high, where sparklets is 100. The lower the number, obviously, the better the water. Oranges can handle up to about 1,800 TDS. There's not much we can do for the salts, other than mix it with city water, unfortunately. That or drill another well. The closer we get to the ocean, the more salt your well will have.
Around here, I mean, how many of the wells do you run into that after you drill them that the salt content is high enough where you have to dilute it or put filter in? It's like 10% of the wells, or 1%, or 50%?
5 to 10.
Okay.
5. Where I have a well over in Winchester. When I started when I drilled that well, it came in at 800 TDS. Then they built the Dominica the dam, the lake up there, and they did a bunch of exploding for, gosh, it went on for 2 years. That well now today is 8,900 TDS. And I still have a reverse osmosis system just for the house, and it cleans it. I mean, for the house, it's 100 TDS after it comes out of the system. But for an avocado grove to run that system, we're talking a lot of brine water, and it just becomes uneconomical. I mean, you might as well use city water, unfortunately. I mean, mixing, when we get high salts on, what'd you say, 18, how much TDS?
For 1,200?
1,200. You're right on the borderline. You might want to mix it a little bit with the city. And that will bring that salt down, but you'll have to go through the storage tank system first to mix it together. No, salt's not good. Salt is just part of it, unfortunately. It's one of the part of the gamble of it. All drilling is a gamble. Unfortunately, we all start out there. We can see nowhere near past the floor. We don't know how much water we don't know how much water, how deep it is, how much salt it has. how much iron manganese, how many chemicals it has. I recommend testing your well at least once every 2 years for, as far as chemical tests, TDS, pH. There's a place in Cleveland, you get on the internet, I don't remember the name of the laboratory. But they'll send you out a testing kit, they'll charge you a couple $100, and you'll send your water sample to them, and they'll send it back with a complete analysis, breakdown of what exactly is in your water. And it doesn't hurt. You get a real good picture of what you're dealing with. Go ahead.
Do you offer lab testing? It's listed in here.
Yes, I do. I go through Babcock and Riverside, but I've got a lot of customers that I tell, go ahead and test your well all the time. And I don't want to come out to your property once a year and charge you a lot of money when I can have you save some money by doing it the other way. I have no problem with that, but I love, hey, I come out, no problem, I love making money. Go ahead.
What's the going rate for a submersible pump for a 6-inch pipe?
Going rate, depending on the depth, how deep is the well?
The well is 1,100 feet, but there's water at 250 feet, less.
For the pump and mortar, pipe, wire, well seal, the whole shebang, you're looking about $7,000 to $8,000.
Okay.
It depends on where I'll look at your well log if you still have it, and I'll get a good picture of the well, and then I'll make my decision where I'm going to set the pump.
Do you ever see any grants offered for resuscitating any wells or any storage tanks?
Say that
Do
again?
you ever see any grant offerings for storage tanks?
Grants? No, I haven't.
Okay.
No, I haven't, unfortunately.
Maybe that's something we can ask Selk as one of their solutions to help us with.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. I heard NRCS a long time ago had them for the tanks, but I don't know if they're still offering that.
I couldn't answer that.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I'm getting kicked out. So, it was a pleasure. You have my number on here, and you have what I offer. Don't hesitate. No question is stupid. Use me. It doesn't cost you a dime to use me. Before you do anything, call me, and I'll give you my opinion. I have no problem with that.
And your question on recharge?
And I'll get this information out to you in about a week, so you have it to
To look at the recharge, you really need to look at what the depth of the well is, or the surface, the head.
Yes.
And the way to do that is with a pressure gauge, pressure sensor.